I know with myself in one particular relationship that I was in with somebody that I feel is high on the scale. I remember a friend of mine after the relationship was over, she was like, Michele, why is it every time I tried to point out that this person was manipulating you and hurting you, why did you always defend this person? And she couldn't wrap her mind around like why somebody would do that. And the reality is because that's what abused people do. Hey guys, today I want to talk about how to navigate narcissistic family systems if you don't have a narcissistic family system, but you're dating or you're in a relationship or a marriage with someone that does. And I wanted to talk about this because someone sent me a message on Instagram. The question that they sent in is a really good question, so I want to just read it here. Might you have a video or pointers on how to navigate around a narcissistic sister-in-law, mine, in which my wife is sometimes manipulated by? It's causing tension between us. Okay, so this is a really good question because if we don't know how to handle somebody that has narcissistic family members, then we can do things, like you said, that can cause that tension, that can cause a rift between you and your significant other. And guess what? Narcissists love to do that, especially if you have a healthy relationship with this significant other. They want to do anything and everything to get in between. The first thing that came to my mind when I read this question, when you mentioned that when you notice she's being manipulated. Okay, when we see somebody being manipulated, especially somebody we love and care about, it is completely normal to want to try to help them to see that they're being manipulated. Here's the thing though, when it comes to narcissists, the more you try to convince someone you care about that the other person is toxic, sometimes, actually a lot of the time, that actually backfires and you're made to look like the problem. And I know that in the beginning, when we hear this, this can sound like, well, that's ridiculous. Why wouldn't they see it? I'm going to show them, I'm going to explain it, I'm going to get through and they're going to realize it. But that doesn't happen. So what tends to happen, because if somebody's high on that scale of NPD, they are expert manipulators. And so the way they're manipulating, okay, just to kind of throw this out there, most of the time, they're already setting up your significant other to expect you to speak bad about them. And they do this in a very covert way. So for example, they might say something like, I don't understand why he's always trying to say negative things about me. Like, I don't talk bad about him. Lie. I don't talk bad about him. I think he's just jealous that we're so close. Like, I don't know why he's trying to break us up, why he's trying to ruin the family. That just is so strange to me. When a narcissist talks like this, they do talk about you, right? The healthy, significant other, they do talk about you, but they do so covertly. And when they act like they're concerned and they care, then your significant other actually can believe that. Because remember, they've been in this narcissistic family system for a long time. And so they've been manipulated for a long time. Manipulation almost looks normal to them. So when you come in and you're like, no, that they're manipulating you because they don't want you and I to get close. And often when a significant other is talking like that, there's a lot of emotion there, right? Because you're frustrated because you clearly see the manipulation. So there's this emotion. And here's what happens with the family member of the narcissist. They start to shut down. They start to put up a wall with you. Now, again, I know this is hard to kind of understand, but you have to understand that this is what we've been conditioned to do, because anytime, for example, in my case, anytime I would try to point out that hurtful behavior or that bad behavior, it was met with so much harshness. It was met with more anger. It was met with more abuse, that my nervous system learned that pointing out the bad means something bad is going to go on. Something bad is going to happen. And these are things that happen when it happens all the time. Pointing out abuse, something bad happens. That happening all the time creates paired associations in the nervous system. in your autonomic nervous system. So it creates these paired associations that happen automatically without your conscious consent. And so every time you're about to point out bad behavior or somebody else is trying to get you to do that, to look at the bad in the other person, your nervous system kicks on. And it's like, oh, that's dangerous. Now, again, all of this is happening under or outside of your conscious awareness, but you tend to pull away from that and almost cling to the abuser without realizing that you're doing that. So that being said, the best thing that you can do when you're in a relationship with somebody that comes from a narcissistic family system is first, don't say anything negative about their family. If you say something negative with what I just mentioned, it can create that person clinging to the abuser and causing a rift between you and your significant other. Okay, I'm not saying to support them. I'm not saying to lie and speak highly of somebody that you don't feel highly about. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is to refrain from saying anything negative, from having a lot of heated emotion about the other person. Because again, until the person that comes from the narcissistic family system really can see it for themselves, it's you against an expert manipulator. And who's going to win? Okay. So rather than saying anything negative and rather than lying, what was really helpful, and again, I'll use myself as an example. The one friend that didn't talk bad about that narcissist in my life was the one that helped me to start being grounded in what was going on. She's the one that helped me to realize the manipulation without telling me I was being manipulated. And the way she would do that was, instead of kind of bad-mouthing the narcissist, instead of trying to force me, one, she would listen with a neutral attitude. And when I would share something, which usually sounded like, is this weird that I'm upset because of this abusive behavior? Which is a huge sign of gaslighting, right? Anyone that has undergone gaslighting asks questions like that. Okay. But at that time, I had no idea what gaslighting was. Instead of saying, Michele, like, hello, that's horrible, she would listen calmly and say, well, how do you feel about that? Like, what do you think about that? And literally my head would be like, me, like my thoughts, like that was a whole new concept. Because remember, if you've been in a narcissistic family system, your concept is what they think, what's going on with them. You're constantly gaslit with your own thoughts. You're not allowed to trust yourself. You're not allowed to give your perspective because your perspective is here and everyone else's is up there. And so it was really a new thing to actually like think about my perspective. And so when I would tell her, well, it really hurts when that's being said, when I'm being insulted like that, really hurts. And then the next thing that she did that was so powerful was she would simply validate it. Again, she didn't make me feel like the abuser was the enemy. And again, I know that might be hard to understand. Like, why isn't she helping you to see that that person's the enemy? Well, because she knew that if she did, I would have done what I did with everyone else, and I would have clung to the abuser. It's what happens when you are in knots inside of your nervous system, when you have been conditioned to react in certain ways. And so all she did was validate. She said something like, well, I understand. Like, that's understandable that you would be hurt. If that happened to me, I would be hurt too. That validation, again, was new. I was like, what? My perspective makes sense? Like, you understand me? Like, it makes sense? And what she was doing indirectly was teaching me to trust my perspective. By having someone mirror what I was going through from a neutral place and validate it as reasonable for my emotional reactions, I began to give myself permission to check in with myself, to look at what was going on, to see what I was thinking, things that I didn't think I had permission for. And again, this is kind of embarrassing to admit. But when you've been in a narcissistic family system, these are the things that you aren't allowed to do. So my advice using this would be to listen to your wife, to notice, to validate, to ask her what she thinks about that. And something that might happen is The narcissist will try to see if you are talking bad about them, right? And so they'll say something like, I think that he doesn't like me and he's just trying to get in between us. It's so sad because, I view him in a good light. I don't know why he's so negative and always pointing out the bad. That's what the narcissist will say, something like that, right? He doesn't like me. And what the narcissist is hoping is that their family member goes to you and then you confirm that by saying something like, well, yeah, because she's an abusive person and she's a manipulative person. So that then what happens is, because the narcissist is setting the scene up for that to happen, when you act exactly how the narcissist expects you to act, the abuser then trusts the narcissist's perception. But when they go to you, right, your significant other goes to you and says something like, no, but you think something negative about her. I have nothing negative to say. That's your sister. And there's a line of respect. Okay. For some people, that's hard to do. It's hard to refrain from really blowing up the truth, right? But the problem is when you try to blow up the truth, you cause a rift between you and your significant other. So just a recap, okay? Don't say anything negative about the person, and listen and validate, and be there for your significant other as you mirror her or him, if someone's watching this and the roles are reversed, and you validate and understand from a neutral place. You are empowering your significant other to start trusting themselves and to start really paying attention to what's going on inside and to reach their own conclusions. People from narcissistic family systems, they're not used to being allowed to trust their perspectives, like I said, but they're also not used to making their own decisions. So I hope this helps. It's not easy, but from somebody that's been on both sides of the fence, right? As somebody that's in the abusive relationship, somebody that's having family and friends try to help me, to somebody that now tries to help other people. These tips really do help. They really do work. And then hopefully your significant other at some point will start looking for resources that can help them to heal their trauma. So I hope this video helps. And narcissistic family, I do. Talking about how families, when you talk about how, welcome back to